Hey everybody, time again for the movie retrospective. The one we're going to be talking about, I've been wanting to do this one for a long time because I fucking love this movie. And I feel like it's one that kind of gets overlooked a lot.
It's a weird movie because...
It's really weird. That's why that's... And so I'm going to say right now that it's kind of hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spoil it. So like if you want to see it and you've never seen it, then... I think it's better to go into it not knowing what's coming.
It's a very old school 70s movie. When it starts off, you kind of think it's kind of like one of those hard-boiled police detective movies.
Yeah.
Where did we see it? Was it on Shudder?
It's on Shudder, yeah.
It's on Shudder, yeah. It's a good copy. It's a very good copy.
Yeah, finally.
You find out there's a lot more to it. You think it's about people going crazy, seeing God and killing people. Mm-hmm. But you find out there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, it's kind of about that, but then it kind of goes off in a direction you don't expect.
Yeah. But what was weird is that it is a very ballsy movie for its time.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is.
Yeah, other people copied these ideas a long time after this. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of this in other movies. They say, oh, that's where they got this and that's where they got that. But... it's a good movie. It's old school. It looks kind of low budget.
It is low budget, yeah.
But it has quite a big scope, and there ends up being some practical effects in it that kind of look like something out of the 80s. Not quite as good as say From Beyond, but along that lines, kind of like
a little bit of weird like body horror.
Body horror type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say now this came out in it's called God Told Me To. Also, it was released under the name Demon for some fucking reason. I don't know why. Because I guess some people thought the title was offensive, so when they re-released it, they released it with a different name. So you might have seen it under that name. It was directed by the infamous Larry Cohen, who, if you don't know who that is, he actually died, I think, just earlier this year, maybe last spring. Unfortunately. But probably best known for stuff like he did It's Alive, he did The Stuff, Q the Winged Serpent, Maniac Cop. Yeah. So he's like a very well-known cult filmmaker. And the weird thing about God Told Me To is I feel like it's maybe one of his least known, even though I think it's his best movie.
Yeah, when you comparing it to say Q the Winged Serpent, it's a lot better than that.
Now I love Q the Winged Serpent, I have to say, but I like this one a lot better.
This one was almost kind of like a very old school Cronenberg movie. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, it does like kind of have a little bit of that.
Like The Brood or something.
Like that. Kind of like, okay, the thing about it is, and like I said, I'm going to spoil it, so... if you haven't seen it, I think the first time I saw this, like, I had seen a bunch of Larry Cohen's other movies. Like, I'd seen It's Alive and The Stuff and all that other kind of stuff. But then, like, I kept seeing God Told Me To, like, coming up in all these, like, underrated horror lists. And I'm like, shit, man, it's like, I like Larry Cohen and I've never seen that one. I actually found, like, a kind of a shitty free copy on YouTube. It might still be there, I don't know. But recently when Shudder put it up, I was, like, really excited because I was like, well, now I can see it. Looking a lot better than the shitty, crappy copy that I initially saw, and I liked it a lot better. But so the thing about this movie is that at the very beginning, it kind of hits the ground running. It's like pretty much the very first scene is just people walking through New York City and then suddenly getting plugged by a sniper. Yeah. And it turns out that this guy who's like a sniper, he's like way up on top of this water tower. And our protagonist, who is a police detective by the name of Peter Nicholas, who's played by Tony Lobianco. He decides he's going to climb up there and kind of, try to talk to the guy and see what the fucking deal is and all this other kind of stuff. And this is when you find out that this guy is just going around plugging people and he's just like super calm about it and everything. And he's like, well, why did you do it? Are you upset about something? He's like, no, I'm not upset about anything. He's like, God told me to.
Yeah.
So as the story progresses, and like I said, pretty much the first half to 2/3 of this movie plays out pretty much like a police procedural. It has aspects of The Exorcist in that it's very Catholic because, the main protagonist, the detective, is like really, really religious. And so he kind of gets sucked into these crimes because, the first guy who's the sniper and he says, God told me to. And then they start seeing like all these other kind of mass murders Like the next one is like this guy who just like goes on a mass stabbing like inside a supermarket. Somebody kills their whole family and all this other kind of shit, like just for no reason. And every single one of them, when asked why they do it, they're just very calm about it. And they just say, oh, well, God told me to. Like it's the most normal thing in the world. So because Detective Nicholas is so religious, he starts to get like kind of fascinated with, are these people really, is God really talking to these people? Because he's kind of he's kind of like in the same position, I guess, as like Father Karras in The Exorcist, where he's kind of like having a crisis of faith type of thing.
Yeah, this reminds me of another movie too. There was another movie that kind of had that same, kind of like, what was that movie about? It had the guy from Aliens 2, and it was a Christian movie, and they were going out and abducting people and killing them, and he was saying, these people are demons.
Frailty. We did a review of that.
Yeah, and one of the sons could see it, but the other son couldn't see it.
Yeah.
It comes off kind of a feeling like that in a way.
Yeah.
It's something like that happening. That's what I thought. But, I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's kind of like a Cronenberg movie in a certain way, and then another way that some of the tone kind of, to me, almost reminded me of, remember Liquid Sky?
Yeah, we need to do a review of that. That movie's weird as shit.
Right. Certain parts of it was like kind of, the feeling I got was kind of like the feeling I got from some of the really good scenes in Liquid Sky. Liquid Sky was spotty.
Yeah, because some of it is, but it's like some of it it's like
it was pieced together. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
some of it was a lot better than the other stuff, and the edit wasn't all that good. And it was an art film.
Oh yeah,
they're just having fun making films with their club friends.
Yeah.
And it didn't quite go exactly in the direction I thought it was going to. But this one is almost kind of, there's certain. Well, I don't want to do any spoil.
No, I already said we're going to spoil it. So
there's a UFO theme in Liquid Sky too.
Yeah.
Turns out that it's God's telling them to do it, but in this movie, God's anxious aliens.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And Larry Cohen also wrote the script of this. So he said that he actually got the idea from reading the Bible and it occurring to him that God was like one of the most violent characters in all of literature. And also about the whole like Chariots of the Gods type of stuff that was very big in the 70s where, ancient aliens came and like helped ancient people like do this, that, and the other thing. And that maybe like the reason why there's so many similarities in religions and whatnot is because these aliens visited ancient people.
There's another way to look at it though. I mean, if you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, the kingdom of heaven and God and all his sons that came down from heaven to choose tribes, they're talking about heaven is the space. It's the sky. Sky people. They're seeing clouds and different layers of clouds, so there must be different levels of heaven. And, Yahweh and Yahweh is a lightning god in a way, or a storm god. So really, if you take Old and New Testament stuff, especially like Genesis, if you take it literally, it's about aliens.
Yeah.
Spiritual aliens or alien gods or things not from this world. They're things from space. Yeah. That's what they're talking about. And they're calling it heaven, but things from space. This
movie takes that connection very literally.
Yeah.
In the sense that, and like I said, I kind of love the way this plays out like an investigation. Like it's almost like an investigation because when all these mass murders happen, and I should note too that there's one that happens at like the St. Patrick's Day parade, like through New York City, and the cop or the person that's dressed as a cop that goes on the shooting spree, that's Andy Kaufman, y'all. And this was his first film appearance.
Yeah.
So if you're watching the movie and go, hey, that looks like Andy Kaufman, it's because it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he starts getting kind of like fascinated because, like I said, he's very Catholic and he's riddled with Catholic guilt, even though he has like all these layers as a character because I guess he's still married to his wife, although I suppose they're separated because they don't live together. And he has a girlfriend, like, who's a lot younger, and he's almost like, he's not like shoving it in her face or anything, but it's all very open. But the weird thing about it is that he says he's telling the girlfriend that he can't marry her because his very Catholic wife won't let him divorce her. But really, it's him that's super Catholic and is like weird about divorce and everything. So he, like I said, because he has all of this religious faith crisis going on, he gets super fascinated by all of these mass murders happening around New York City and why all these people are saying God told me to. And so he just starts investigating. And during one of the investigations, he finds out that one of the people that went on a shooting spree had been seen hanging out with this hippie looking guy. They said it was this guy, and he was like walking around barefoot, and he had like really, really long blonde hair. But the creepy thing is that no one can remember what his face looks like. Like everybody says, I don't know, it was just a blur. You know what I mean? So he seems like some kind of weird figure. So it turns out as he investigates that a couple of the other mass shooters said, yeah, they were hanging around with this guy too. So he finds out that this guy's name is Bernard Phillips. And he, as the investigation goes on, he kind of like finds out that the mom of this person was evidently said that she doesn't come out and say that she was raped by extraterrestrials. She just says that she was walking down the beach in Nantucket or something like that. And then she loses time. And then she was found in New Jersey, like walking down the street naked. And then she found out she was pregnant. Right? So essentially she's been impregnated by an alien.
Yeah.
So you find out that this Bernard Phillips character, who is like a Jesus character, but also kind of like a demonic or like a satanic character also, he has like psychic powers and he can like tell people to kill other people for whatever his reason is. I'm not really sure what his end game is. But then...
Well, all that stuff kind of tied in with the idea of the demiurge. Yeah. Which goes back to the Old Testament, and the Greek understanding of the Old Testament, where if you have God and all of his sons picking tribes and giving it's kind of like, it's basically they're talking about Zeus and all his sons, and they're mating with mortal women to create Nephilim. And that's the same as creating demigods, like Perseus. It's all that same idea. Well, if you take that literally, then that means you have gods and the sons of the gods, which are kind of like his aliens or alien servants or whatever, having sex with mortal women to create half aliens. This also kind of goes up the movie, like the Anunnaki. Kind of like Anunnaki and all that kind of shit. Niribu.
Yeah.
Which, if you have money and you have a big name, you can take an idea like this and put a bunch of special effects in it and basically make Prometheus.
Yeah.
Which Prometheus and Alien Covenant start getting into this kind of stuff. It's a good flick. It's just way ahead of its time. It's trying to do a pretty sophisticated story with not much money.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of Larry Cohen's bag.
Right. But I think he did a good job with the special effects.
Definitely.
With the special effects that, he did do, especially for the time. This really would have...
Yeah, this was 75, 76.
This would have tripped people out, I think, in 75, 76, because I think the average understanding of mythicism or Bible mythicism wasn't... most people didn't read the Bible that way, so they would have saw this as very sacrilegious.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And they would have said, well, the Bible doesn't say that. And he goes, well, no, in certain passages, if you read it literally, that's kind of what it's talking about.
Yeah.
Things from the heavens meeting with mortal women to create half-alien offspring.
Yeah.
It says Nephilim, but that's aliens crossbreeding with women.
Yeah.
To make super beings, which that's kind of like the Greek gods, creating demigods like Perseus and Hercules. That's the same shit. But, they're not as pretty as an alien.
Well, the thing I love about this one, and like you said, I feel like it's like really ahead of its time. Because it goes in, like it has like a sci-fi element to it, obviously, because of the whole ancient aliens and like
sci-fi,
these half-human
horror, body horror.
But... it's almost like it's very, very grounded in reality.
Right.
Like I said, it almost kind of gives me like an Omen kind of vibe too, where it's like, it's supernatural, but it all up to that, it pretty much seems like shit that could kind of happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the way it's shot, it's very matter of fact.
Like sometimes when an alien in this movie, if an alien tries to appear to you, it kind of looks like it takes the form of kind of like the Virgin Mary. It's using a bunch of religious symbolism that maybe like a Catholic would understand.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, it might be like a man that looks like the Virgin Mary, but then you find out actually it's like a hermaphrodite alien that looks like the Virgin Mary and talks like the Virgin Mary. It's just weird. It's just a weird
because the alien, the one who's making all these people around the city do this stuff, like with his psychic powers and stuff, is kind of like the head of this cult. And there's all these other people in the cult. They're usually like older white dudes. But this guy, Bernard, he like lives down in this basement that's kind of like a stand-in for hell, I'm assuming, because there's like furnaces and shit. And you can't really, like I said, when people look at him, they can't really get a good bead on him. And even when, Detective Nicholas goes down to meet him, and he's just kind of bathed in this yellow light. He's played by Richard Lynch. He was in like a shit ton of movies back then. And he's already like discovered that he's already talked to the doctor that delivered him as a baby, and found out that they thought it was a virgin birth, that the mom was a virgin. They already found out that the baby, they couldn't tell what gender it was. So it's hermaphroditic or it's androgynous.
Yeah, that actually, I forgot to actually said to explain why I was saying that what they were talking about was the demiurge. The ancient Greeks interpreted, or not they're the Romans and the Greeks, the ones that were, dealing with the New Testament when they were first starting to put books together that ended up being in the New Testament. One of the very early versions of it was, what was that guy's name? He put one of the first versions of the Bible together. It only had a couple of the books. So their interpretation of it was that the Old Testament God was the demiurge, and it came from the pleroma, which is where the gods come from, and it's the devil god. It's good and evil at the same time.
Yeah.
That's why it was doing all the kind of stuff in the Old Testament that it was doing. But from the pleroma came another son who was Jesus, who was a spiritual being that sat at the right hand of this God, but instead of having to get to heaven by going through the demiurge or God's rules, hard-ass, difficult rules to follow that are in the Old Testament, you could be saved by grace.
Yeah.
Through the faith, through Jesus. And then it had to do with blood sacrifice through, with what do they call it, during Passover, which is, that's what the whole crucifixion scene had to do with basically Jewish blood magic, which is, scapegoat rituals and sacrificial lambs.
Yeah.
To wash away sin of the individual or the tribe. So basically, when you're seeing this God, it might be good and evil. They're talking about the demiurge.
Yeah.
It's not the Jesus God. It's the so-called real God or the devil God.
Yeah.
The one that will pass harsh judgment on you. It's kind of above right and wrong.
And the creepy thing about this, too, is that the people that Bernard psychically tells to kill other people, there's one great scene, I think probably the best scene in this movie, where this guy has essentially just shot his entire family. He shot his wife and 2 little kids, and the detective is in there talking to him, and he's just he's just talking about it like it's nothing, and he's like, and he's all happy and beatific and everything, and he's like, oh, I didn't have anything against him, it just occurred to me, and all this other kind of shit.
In the Old Testament, the demiurge, God demanded the sacrifice of the firstborn, and it demanded human sacrifice. It wasn't until later that got taken. That's what they're talking about there.
Yeah, and that's what, like I said, so there's a lot going on in this movie. So it's like, as the thing goes on, so he finds out that Bernard Phillips is essentially a half alien, because he was and he is able to do he has godlike powers. But the creepy thing about it is that as the investigation continues, Peter Nicholas is curious as to why Bernard hasn't killed him or hasn't tried to hurt him. It's almost kind of like he's doing all this to get his attention or something like that. So as the detective is going through his own history, he finds out that his past, because he was raised in a Catholic orphanage, mirrors that of Bernard Phillips. He finds his birth mother, and who's played by the same woman that played she's that older lady that was in Beetlejuice. Her name's Sylvia something. Mm-hmm. Who was in there with she was like the secretary, not the secretary, but she was kind of like with talking to the football team and everything like that. I'm not your coach. He survived. But that lady. So he goes and sees her in a nursing home, and she tells him the same story, that she was walking home from like the World's Fair, the New York World's Fair in 1941, and she was essentially abducted, and she was like in a ball of light, and then she came back and she found out that she was pregnant and she had never had sex and all this other kind of stuff. So the detective finds out that he is also half alien. It's just that he never knew it because apparently his human genes like overrode the alien ones. They kind of have a discussion about it at the end.
Yeah.
So when he finally meets up with Bernard at the end, Bernard is trying to get Peter Nicholas to impregnate him. He has a vagina in his abdomen in case it's just like here on his side, like by his rib cage, like you do. And so he's trying to get Peter Nicholas to impregnate him so they can have like another race of... So this is a weird movie, you guys, because like I said, the first 2/3 of it is just like a police procedural. It's like a police investigation.
You don't know it's going to go this way.
And you don't know that it's going in this weird sci-fi. Like there's a couple conversations, like somebody talking about ancient aliens and somebody like mentioning that kind of stuff. But it's very grounded in reality. It's a very gritty 70s, almost like Dog Day Afternoon or Mean Streets or something like that. It has that kind of vibe going on. So when it just starts going into this like super bizarre like sci-fi direction, it's just like super crazy. And it's like, so I can see why at the time it didn't do very well. I mean, plus you have to think too, 1975, 76, like a lot of really good horror movies came out there. That was Carrie came out that year. The Omen came out that year. So there was like a lot of competition, I guess. And this one was maybe just too weird for people.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Larry Cohen makes some weird shit.
You're kind of shooting yourself in your foot because if you have people that are Christians, they watch this, they think it's just, either just off the wall or real sacrilegious.
Yeah, because they're implying that Jesus and Moses and stuff like that were aliens.
We're all aliens.
They're implying that in this movie.
But then if you have people who are sci-fi fans, that they go, oh man, why'd they put that Christian stuff in there? That's how they're going to react to that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like...
But no, it's actually, the movie was in a certain way, the concepts behind the movie are kind of supported by certain ancient interpretations of what the Old Testament and the New Testament were about. I wish I could remember that guy's name.
I can't remember.
It was before the Bible was compiled. They had a guy in Rome who put a church together and put a Bible together. Of course, the rest of the Roman Christians didn't like it, and then they made the Bible we know of as a response to that one. I forgot what they were called. It was kind of one of the first Christian denominations. It was the only main difference between that Christianity and the Christianity that you know today is that in that Christianity, the Old Testament God was the demiurge. It was kind of the bad guy. The Jesus in his version of the New Testament, which was compiled as mostly like Pauline epistles, was a Jesus that came from the pleroma. That did sit at the right hand of it, but it wasn't. But was a good God. It was a God of grace, and that one never lived on the earth.
Yeah,
it was never born of a woman and all that. It was a celestial Jesus. I can't remember what they were called.
Yeah,
I used to use the word all the time. I used to talk about it all the time. But I forgot what they were. Now I'm going to look like an idiot on a video. Because it's like, what the hell is he talking about? You can go right there on Wikipedia and they'll tell you about it. It did exist, but that form of Christianity is gone. I forgot what it was called, though.
Yeah. But like I said, it may seem like this kind of like knockoff little cheap B movie, but there's really a lot of like really kind of deep ideas going on behind this. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's a really interesting relic of the time. I don't know. It just seemed like it didn't seem like it got a lot of outrage at the time. It just seemed like it kind of came and went. Now there was kind of some controversy about like the two guys that financed the movie. After they saw a cut of it, they said, yeah, well, we gave you the money, but it's like, just don't put our names on it, because I guess they like thought it was offensive or whatever. And like I said, when it didn't do very well in the theater the first time, it did like a second run with the name Demon, which I guess was trying to imply that Bernard Phillips was like a bad guy, because people were offended by the title God Told Me To, because they were seeing Bernard Phillips as God. And even in the movie, it's like he's the villain, obviously, but they're not really, I mean, they're kind of playing with the whole idea that maybe essentially he is a god. And, you know, what would that mean? Like, is there any way of proving if somebody says they shoot up a bunch of people and then they say, oh, God told me to? Well, someone did tell him to. Someone psychically told him to. So essentially, God did tell him to.
Yeah, it's a very unorthodox interpretation of Christianity, and a lot of most people know Orthodox Christianity, but you know there's a lot of accepted unorthodox Christianity.
Yeah,
and this is very much like something based on old Gnosticism. Wish I could remember those guys' names, but
yeah,
like for instance, you know, the Book of Mormon is not orthodox by say like a Catholic point of view. It's got some stories in there that. They're just never going to find that in the New Testament. That's only in the Book of Mormon, you know. But it doesn't matter. That's not what religions are about. All religions are unorthodox. They're all like that.
Yeah.
Orthodoxy is just a point of view.
Yeah. And like I said, I feel like this particularly, and I'm surprised that more stuff didn't come out that was kind of like this, but because it's kind of like Chariots of the Gods, but through maybe like a more atheistic kind of lens, or like a kind of a cynical sort of lens, because Larry Cohen was like not down with the religion, so he was kind of like
he just
poking fun at it a little bit.
I think he read some books about Gnosticism.
He may have,
and the parallels between Christianity, Judaism, ancient Greek and Roman religions, all ancient religions kind of have that celestial family, father of the gods origin, and all of his sons, and all the making of the demigods are all kind of like that.
Yeah. And
I think he read some books that pointed out that that's what the Old Testament and the New Testament were about: the creation of demigods, gods having children with mortal people, to make supermen and Nephilim. Jesus was kind of like a Nephilim in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
So, like I said, there's a lot of that kind of shit going on in this.
So he just showed it to you. It literally what that would be like
if it happened
from the
in real
heavens,
life,
and they're making children with mortal women. That's aliens coming down and crossbreeding with humans.
Yeah.
To make half humans.
And then, like I said, these hybrids are essentially godlike figures, because they have godlike powers, and they
like psychic abilities and stuff.
Right, and they can like make people do things just by suggesting.
That's what Jesus, you could say, had powers like that.
Well, I think that's kind of the implication of what this movie was. That's where he's getting all
this. This is coming from Scripture.
Yeah,
he's just showing it to you that that's what it would really look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said,
I think the shit out of you.
I think that's what makes this movie so cool and like so unsettling. It's just, it has just such a strange concept.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, you're kind of like, nah, that sort of makes sense. You know what I mean? And I just really like the kind of like grounded way that he went about it. Like you said, it's supernatural, but in a way, it seems like it could happen, because nothing is like really all that fantastical.
No.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a really cool movie. But I wanted to say like a couple of things. Apparently the main actor that's in it, that played Peter Nicholas, whose name was Tony Lobianco, he was actually not the first guy that was going to be in it. It was supposed to be Robert Forster, which I think might have been pretty cool, because he always played kind of rumpled detective kind of characters like that.
I remember the name of the first version of Christianity, the Marcionites.
Yeah.
It was called the Book of Marcion. You guys can look that up. It was the first version of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the first version of the Bible. It didn't have the Old Testament in it. It just had, I don't even think it had any of the Gospels in it. It was just a bunch of Pauline epistles. It might have had one Gospel.
Yeah.
But there was no concept of a virgin birth in Marcionism, I don't believe.
Yeah.
Maybe there was, but they believed. Oh, maybe, Marcionism I think did, but they thought there was a prototype before that to where there was no virgin birth, that it was a celestial Jesus only, because Marcion didn't make the Pauline epistles, but the Pauline epistles support a celestial Jesus, one that was never born.
Yeah.
So the way it phrases things. And it never asks any questions about It never even references gospel stories. So whoever wrote the Pauline epistles had never read a gospel.
Yeah.
So those Christians didn't have any stories about a Jesus ministry on earth. It was just something in heaven.
Yeah. This is like really, like I said, this is like fascinating shit if you look at kind of like
outer
the mythology
space.
of it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Up with the stars.
So in some ways, like this movie kind of explores that sort of aspect of religion and like myth making and things like that. So like I said, Robert Forster was supposed to be the main lead, but apparently he was only on the set for a few days and him and Larry Cohen had a falling out. And so he got replaced with someone else, which I think Robert Forster would have been good in it, like I said, because he kind of plays these rumple detective characters a lot, particularly in the 70s. But in a way, I kind of like that they got a slightly less known actor because it made him seem more like an everyman type of character, and he actually really did a good job in this, I thought. Another thing, too, and this amused the shit out of me, and this was something that Larry Cohen did a lot. You see a lot of these shots that he did. I mean, the cinematography in this is actually pretty nice and everything. So all these shots that he did around New York City, he didn't have a single permit to do any of that shit. And like, as far as I know, the thing at the St. Patrick's Day parade and everything like that, I think that was really the St. Patrick's Day parade. And he was like filming like a dude like shooting up the place, and like he had to just... It's like guerrilla filmmaking.
That's how I would have done it.
Well, yeah, because it's expensive to get...
just get your phone, or we're going to make the scene.
Yeah.
And you have people going, just a movie, standing around in the background.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't get caught.
You have some signs, we're just making a movie.
Just reminded me of, like, fucking Ed Wood.
And you shoot that shit in 20 minutes, and then you just run. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's like, we don't have permits, run. But so that's essentially what Larry Cohen was doing, which I thought was really cool and like badass. So I mean, especially if you know that and like watch the movie, like considering all the shots that he got, I was like kind of amazing how he shot like out in the streets shit, and he just did stuff and he didn't get caught.
Fuck New York.
But
they would have charged him so much money.
Well, yeah, because they have to like close off so many streets and all this other kind of stuff, and they don't want to do that because of the traffic and
just show up like you own that shit and shoot it, and then get the hell out of it.
Well, that's what he would do. That was his thing. Now, and like I said, this is on Shudder at the moment, and if you have Shudder and you have not seen it, there is also a delightful documentary about Larry Cohen called King Cohen, and it is also on Shudder, and I highly recommend watching that because he is entertaining as hell, and he has all these fucking great stories about like all the movies he made, like I said, shooting without permits, and because he shot most of his movies in New York City because that's where he grew up. So it's really, really entertaining, and I really recommend it.
Yeah, and check out Marcionism and the Book of Marcion and Gnosticism, and you'll see, that's what this movie's talking about.
Yeah.
That's what the Greek interpretations of all these spiritual writings, most of them don't survive anymore.
Yeah.
But, some of them are in the Bible. Well, all of them are in the Bible, but there's a bunch of them that didn't survive.
And like I said, don't go into this expecting, yes, it has sci-fi elements, but don't go into it expecting like a sci-fi movie. It is mostly a police drama, like a police investigation story that has like some sci-fi elements at the end. It's not even really, I don't even know if I'd call it a straight up horror movie, although it has horror elements also. And some of the scenes are like kind of creepy or unsettling. But I feel like it's getting its due now, maybe. It's like it didn't do very well at the time. It kind of got forgotten about a little bit.
It's a low-budget, trippy movie. You know what I mean? You just go see it for what it is.
But in the past few years, I've seen like a lot of lists that put it on like their top 100 horror movies, or like, it's on like a lot of underrated lists.
You're not talking about Alien 1 or Predator or anything like that. It's just a fucking weird
It's movie. A weird movie from the 70s.
Kind of like The Hidden. Wasn't it called The Hidden? The one that the old Cronenberg movie? It wasn't called The Hidden. Was it the one that they had the damn virus in them?
Well, that was more than one.
Shivers. No.
That was the Parasites.
It was the one where they became sex zombies.
Yeah, that was Shivers, I think.
Shivers,
wasn't it?
Yeah, it kind of looks like that movie in a way.
Well, it's like a similar.
Although maybe
time
everything
period.
kind of looked like that.
Everything looked like that in the 70s.
It's just a movie.
You know what this reminds me of too? Extro.
Yeah, okay.
It has that kind of vibe Extro. To it, too. Because Extro kind of had that family drama type thing, but then also there's aliens.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a special effects fest or anything like that. It was kind of like almost like a realistic sort of thing. Except for, you know what I mean? That one, Extra, was a lot grosser, because didn't that guy, like a full-grown man, like, bust out of a woman's vagina and shit like that?
There's all kinds of weird shit.
There's all kind of weird shit. Yeah. But if you liked Extra, you'd probably like this, because the vibe of it is kind of similar. Yeah. Like, this one isn't real gory or anything like that, but it's just has some creepy, like, unsettling scenes, and the concept of it is just so cool. So I can see it's kind of like a curiosity. But yeah, so if you have Shudder, definitely check it out. And like I said, check out King Cohen too, which is the documentary about him. I think they have a couple of his other movies on there. They might have Q the Winged Serpent on there too, but I'll have to watch that again at some point. But yeah, so definitely go check it out if you're a Larry Cohen fan.